Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome. This panel will dive into the role of blockchain in healthcare innovation today. In particular, I'd like for us to hone in on how we can use a technology like blockchain to earn people's trust. My name is Phaedra Bueno-Diris. I'm IBM Consulting's global leader for responsible AI. I've also been a friend to Remedy since its founding. We have a fantastic panel here today. I've asked my panelists to take about 7 minutes to introduce themselves and to talk about the role of blockchain in healthcare and what they are doing. I'll start with my first panelist, David Stefanich. Would you please be so kind as to tell us your story?
Oh, Phaedra, thank you so much for having us out today. Super excited. So I'm Dave Stefanich, CEO, co-founder, along with Dr. Cross. We helped put this together, so we're absolutely grateful to be out here. Anytime we can evangelize innovation when it's impacting lives, that's exactly what we're all about. So Remedy, in the simplest way, is it's a digital workflow and a data automation platform that bridges the clinical care world and the clinical research world. We work with lab, diagnostic manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and healthcare providers, and they can use Remedy to improve that patient-provider experience and improve the quality and efficacy of the care that the patients are receiving. Our digital workflows simplify and improve that step-by-step process across different organizations, allow them to collaborate for really the best care that you can have out in the market. The data automation layer automates the interoperability across all kinds of different systems that we've all seen in market, LIMS, EHRs, CTMSs, EDCs. I try to use a lot of acronyms, Phaedra, so I hope everybody's enjoying that a little bit. But as it automates this privacy and security and kind of consent compliance, it's just key for that global jurisdictions for these segments to actually be able to use. And that scalability is one of the real reasons we're able to unpack a little bit related to what we're doing with the Avalanche subnet architecture, which we're super excited about, that I'll highlight in just a moment. So, some of the examples of that data automation compliance, it's just a force multiplier that's in healthcare across Clemson University and some of the surrounding communities in South Carolina. They ran on Remedy at the height of their COVID testing and vaccine campaigns. And the way Remedy automated that compliance for all the CFR 21 data compliance and FDA admissibility really allowed that dynamic consent management to extend not just on campus, but to the community, outreaching school systems. And it was actually, just a powerful experience for all of us to experience during that time. And because of that platform, we're able to run some of the clinical data structures associated with Clemson. So they were able to quickly join the national Moderna vaccine trial that was running on Remedy. And along with two other university campuses that didn't have med schools at the time, which were Indiana University and the University of Maryland. And they followed Clemson and how they joined the trial and how they were able to execute that. And we continue to work with them today. On the international side, we're super excited. We've been working with the Kirby Institute, a diagnostic company, Cepheid, that are running a national Hep C test campaign on Remedy. The campaign easily incorporates an opt-in for clinical trial arm and allows them to differentiate those systems that we're rolling. And finally, it's pretty exciting for us because we're shortly be able to announce that one of the largest lab networks in North America, we're using our platform because it's easier for them to be compliant across, healthcare use cases, and they're targeting occupational health, clinical trials, genomic biobanks, and rural health program, sticking with that mission of what Remedy is out there, all about making sure, people are getting impacted the way we want to see that. But I tell you, you touched on one point that was interesting. We always get the most common question, why blockchain? And again, this is how I always answer it. We are working in a distributed industry that has had a huge investment over the years, but just hasn't been able to get over that hump of adoption and so forth. So we had a problem. How do we handle global security, global data compliance, and multi-jurisdictional compliance? And that's what we found in blockchain architecture. From Remedy's very inception, we've been running on protocol, and we were able to take that protocol to a global date timestamps, pointers, and the segmentation of PII and PHI data and bring it back together. So we had that level of encryption and security that we were able to monitor all the way through. So again, it wasn't we had blockchain looking for an industry. We had an industry problem, and we found that the best-in-class solution for that was using a blockchain-based architecture as we went through. And again, for us, it's super important to be agnostic, right? The way to get adopted in our industry is not be tied to just one type of test, one lab network, one health system, that agnostic thing. But we ran into something about 7 months ago that was just game changing for us, and that we needed speed. And originally, when we were looking at how we build what we can do in the Remedy world, we looked at the ERP model. I can track a spark plug to a Volvo in the Ukraine, but can I find diagnostic information down the street? So we took a business model and brought it to the backbone of our business. And we used that same approach when we looked at the fasting gaming backbones that are out there in the market, and it was absolutely Avalanche. And it was super exciting. I got to spend some time with John in Barcelona and learn the subnet architecture extends that compliance mindset we have to separate PII, PHI, and that transactional information so we can handle identity, transactions, as well as compliance, and continue to separate even down at that subnet level. And then some of the work we were able to do with Patrick and talking about some of the Hyper-V stuff they're doing out there. I mean, I hear 60,000 transactions a second. It translates to me to 60,000 lives impacted a second. And that gets super exciting for us is how we bring that stuff to market. And what's really been nice so far is we have a focus on, I mentioned clinical trials, diagnostics, and these devices, but we've already built out an SDK. We're able to expose some of that connectivity to us, where we have a company that's doing patient solicitation for clinical trials. They're running on top of us. People are tracking pharmaceutical products, and that's going to be touched on with Darren and some of our others. But that ability to really take speed, security, and trust out to the user's hand, that patient experience has just been the backbone. And that's been the Remedy journey now, just approaching 5 years plus, I think. And it's exciting. So again, that's us in a nutshell. So turn it back over to you, Phaedra.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Many questions, but I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves. Over to you, John. Would you mind taking about 7 minutes to introduce yourself and your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. My name is John Wu. I'm president of Ava Labs. Ava Labs is the team behind the blockchain Avalanche. And Avalanche is well known for a few things. One of the things it's known for is its unique consensus protocol that allows for sub-second finality. In other words, it's really fast. Things can clear in a very, very efficient, almost instant manner. It also has a unique architecture. The architecture allows what we call the subnet architecture. David alluded to that, which basically means you can create your own blockchain, but leverage the security of the Avalanche consensus protocol. So you can almost think of it as a network of blockchains all tied together. And then Ava Labs also, I think, is very important here because the people here and the mission of Ava Labs has always been to tokenize real-world assets. We want to create tools and services to help various industries basically do what they do better. We are the underlying technology, and we want to create things that allow them to take advantage of blockchain, especially one that is as fast as Avalanche, as much scale as Avalanche. And there are certain overlapping themes, and I think David already mentioned some of them. Regardless of what industry you're in, they want to basically the data workflow to be automated and to move faster. They need automatic reporting. It's so hard to have different silos with different numbers and databases, and it's hard, and you have to hire third parties in order to validate things and verify the data. They also want interoperability. The subnet architecture allows Remedy to create things in a unique way that they can have different databases talk to each other without disclosing certain pieces of information, as well as allows them to basically be compliant. In the healthcare industries, you have to separate PHI data from PII data. Another important thing that a lot of industries want is what we call provenance, but it's really serialization. You need to know that that thing is actually genuine from beginning to end, whatever it is, whether it's the art industry or something, who owned piece of art, or California is now doing registry of vehicles on a blockchain for the same reason. You want that title registry to, in a serial fashion, in the provenance to be real. The way we set up the blockchain architecture is so that the subnetworks can allow the individual developer or industries create their own customized execution environment. So we've worked with many Wall Street firms, T. Rowe Price, Wellington, KKR, Wisdom Tree, just to name a few. And they all obviously need compliance because there's such regulation in that business. So the architecture of their subnets is such that they are on the network level, they allow the rules to be embedded into the blockchain itself so they can emit certain players and not emit players, as well as on the smart contract level. So it's built for compliance. And in healthcare, there's a lot of regulation also. And lastly, everyone, if you're going to work with enterprise, you need to have the ability to scale. And the subnet architecture also allows that, because Avalanche is, unlike a lot of other blockchains, is a horizontal scaling method with all of these subnets, and have the ability for all these subnets to talk to each other and message with each other. And I think Dave and Remedy have done a great job of taking this technology and using other technology to abstract away things in terms of what they're allowed to display and show to different bodies, and then be compliant with the industry. And just to give a couple of examples of enterprises that we work with who have all of these issues, Deloitte. Deloitte is deploying on Avalanche and for an application for FEMA, for disaster recovery. And there's so many reasons why, but one of the reasons why they're doing is when you have disaster recovery situations, you have so many participants, insurance companies, municipalities, the individual victims who need to get their money really quickly. So you need that information and that data to move very quickly in a seamless fashion. And that's a big project as well. So the speed of the Avalanche blockchain is why they chose Avalanche. We already talked about Wall Street and the need for compliance, and the Avalanche subnetwork architecture allows for that in a very efficient and easy way. There's another one, Vodafone. We're working with Vodafone. Vodafone has this grand vision one day when we go into the Internet of Things, and there's going to be constantly grabbing data, and they want all the data to talk to each other. And frankly, you need some blockchain that is scalable. So they were actually deploying somewhere else. So now they decided to do it on blockchain because this is a more scalable, Avalanche is a more scalable blockchain. And the other reason why is because their first application of this will be for EV cars in Europe that have battery powered. And then there are also chargers in various places. So the process of paying for that and showing up and getting the right information from the charger to the car and how much it's used, et cetera, takes a few steps, and unfortunately behind the scenes takes even more steps. So what they want to do is effectively embed a wallet into every car, so when they do charge an EV, it will automatically seamlessly charge for the right amount and then allow the driver to effectively move forward and have a seamless experience. So when these are all various industries. There is, government we just talked about. We talked about a telecom company for IoT. We also talked about Wall Street. There's also gaming companies, loyalty businesses, but those have different features that are not necessarily applicable here. But what we are most excited about, when I heard from my team that they were talking to Remedy and David, I made it a point that I'd go meet him, because helping out the healthcare industry that, from my understanding, is so antiquated in terms of its technology and processes, is something that I think is necessary. And you need people like David and Remedy who have the industry-specific knowledge, and hopefully with the technology that we provide, and as well as some other parties, we will be able to streamline their businesses and help them create a great service for the world.
Excellent. Thank you, John, for describing Avalanche and giving us that overview. Dhiren, would you like to go next?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this very interesting sort of a panel discussion. So I'm Dhiren Thakur. I'm President and CEO of MedEditus International, which is a nonprofit that I founded 3.5 years ago. And the major mission we have is to improve access to medicines in low and middle income countries, specifically in sub-Saharan Africa, where access to medicine is a major issue. The approach we have taken is really look for a long-term solution. Most African countries have chronic shortages of medicine. They also are fraught with counterfeit medicines all over the countries within Africa. So why is that the case? Is the answer a question we asked. It's very clear to us from looking at the data that a major reason why African countries have not been able to address this problem is because they do not have local capacity to manufacture medicines. Most countries in Africa rely heavily, somewhere between 70 and 95% for their medicines. They rely on import from India, China, and other countries. Obviously, this is very unreliable, the supply chain, but it also is very porous. There along the way from India or China to Africa and within Africa, the supply chain is interrupted by cartels that substitute good medicines with counterfeit medicines. So we believe that the long-term solution for this problem is improving or significantly increasing local capacity to manufacture medicines. And so with that, we decided that we would go to one of the countries in Africa. We're going to go into Kenya and start a pharmaceutical manufacturing operation. But obviously, adding one more pharmaceutical manufacturing to existing manufacturers is sort of an incremental solution. We really want to contribute to really a major change, a major increase in local capacity and ecosystem. And we believe that the solution really lies in applying some of the new technologies. So number one, we want to bring continuous modular manufacturing in Africa. This is a new technology that's been developed over the last 10, 15 years by multinational pharmaceuticals. And this is really a game changer. Compared to a traditional batch manufacturing, which takes thousands of square feet of space and a lot of very large staff and a long time to really produce a batch of any given medicine. A continuous manufacturing line can be put, the entire assembly can be put in a 2,000 square foot room. And you can basically run this 24/7. So a small, compact, very easily scalable manufacturing line can produce as much as 2 billion tablets a year. And this can be easily scaled. You can replicate this to 2, 4, 10. So that's one approach. How can we really, demonstrate that manufacturing can be scaled very rapidly? The second problem in Africa is quality. So this is where our partnership with Remedy comes into picture. From the very beginning, we have decided that we want to produce medicines at a very, very high level of quality. This is a highly regulated industry, and so we really need to produce medicines under the so-called good manufacturing practices standard. So that's number one. How do you do that? Most companies in Africa do not really produce medicines under GMP conditions because it's a very onerous process. There's thousands and thousands of sort of documentation of how you do this. Then you have to really actually demonstrate that you are following the process. And most companies are just not able to do that. So that's number one. And second is, even if you produce medicines at a high quality, how do you demonstrate to public, to regulatory agency that you are actually doing so? This is where Remedy's partnership with us and deploying blockchain in all of our operations really makes this possible for us. So our goal is to have blockchain data architecture throughout our operations, starting from acquiring ingredients, all of the manufacturing processes, but more importantly and equally importantly, also in a distribution of our products to the patient. What we want to be able to do is to actually have high quality, but also by using the data architecture, demonstrate to people that everything we do is at the highest level of quality from the time we produce medicines to distribute it to patients. So this is really will be the first time we are going to marry the modern manufacturing technology with blockchain data architecture across all our operations. And the last piece of this puzzle, and that is monitoring that the patients are actually taking the medicines that they are supposed to take, and also reporting the outcomes of these medicines. So we want to really incorporate this as a part of our closed loop. We would like to, have using wearables and mobile phone technology. We would like the patients to report their compliance of taking medicines and then report outcomes. This is going to be also a very important part of, I guess, overarching goal to improve access to medicine, and so the government and other stakeholders can actually use this data to then influence their policy. So as you can see, we have sort of a all-encompassing sort of approach to improving access to medicine, and blockchain will play a critical role in what we want to accomplish. And we hope that by demonstrating this, we will be able to invite larger players to really make significant investment to scale manufacturing in Africa.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sava?
Yeah, hi guys, thanks for inviting me. So I'm from Crowdfunded Cures. We're a social enterprise Web3 project as well, which is in the DeSci, decentralized science space. My background is I'm a lawyer and a patent attorney, but I've been working with Crowdfunded Cures since sort of blockchains, Web3, but that was based on the ideas of my thesis, looking at areas where there are perverse or missing incentives under the patent system for developing medicines. So things like repurposing generic drugs, where you can't effectively enforce a monopoly price, and then also things like nutraceuticals, diets, lifestyle interventions, and basically everything outside, a molecule, a patentable molecule, which is effectively ignored by the sort of modern pharmaceutical industry. So what we're really interested in, I guess the holy grail would be to create a clinical trial data marketplace, essentially. Instead of people paying for new drugs and paying monopoly prices for drugs, they would instead pay for treatments and treatment protocols, essentially, and backed up by clinical trial data. And then, as with blockchain, we're very interested in the idea of being able to enable these clinical trial data marketplaces on chain. There are non-trivial reasons why we should want to do these things, like, for instance, the immutability and the auditability of these records. Also, the ability to trade data on chain through, say, what we call IP NFTs, which, but you can have other mechanisms, but essentially you can have a unique pointer or an object that points towards some clinical trial data that may represent a particular treatment protocol, say a repurposed generic drug, or looking at a dietary intervention or a lifestyle intervention. And that data can then be traded. You can fractionalize this NFT, or you can and then trade it on the markets in real time and with integrity and immutability. And with I guess the hope we had with Crowdfunded Cures was that we could tap in a little bit into the improved liquidity ability of the crypto markets, where you'd have people raising sort of $300 million in 30 seconds, for particular projects. And, we thought, well, there are NFTs for apes that are worth, $2 billion market caps, probably not now, but, there is the ability to do crowdfunding through also leveraging blockchain. And that's also an interesting use case for us. So the idea behind Crowdfunded Cures is essentially that we would crowdfund or a pre-order for the clinical trial data, for successful clinical trial data, effectively put a price on successful clinical trials. And we could do that through the issue of medical impact NFTs or NFTs for a specific use case, say depression or longevity. We've been working with VitaDAO, which is a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization funding longevity research. And our particular interest is in, say, finding which generic drugs might be effective for longevity. But yeah, we've been really interested in and happy to partner with Remedy, who are like actually putting clinical trial data on chain and in a way that is HIPAA compliant and that is reliable, can be audited, FDA compliant, so we can basically have clinical trial data that's that effectively can then point to an NFT object that could be traded. But the ultimate goal for us is essentially, as I was saying, to create this marketplace for clinical trial data and effectively eventually be able to sort of compete with traditional pharma's blockbuster model, where we would enable funding of research that is traditionally not funded by pharma, but that essentially provides more better healthcare outcomes, what they would call quality adjusted life years, for like a lower cost. So looking at becoming more efficient. As part of that, on the Web3 side, we're a charity, but we are incubating public good pharma on the Web2 side, which is a more traditional biotech, but also leveraging these kinds of new payment models, and particularly engaging with self-insured employers in the US and single payers to do what we call outcomes-based financing, which is basically like a prize. Essentially what we've been doing with Crowdfunded Cures, where we're trying to crowdfund a prize. You would have a payer agree to pay for clinical trial data for, say, a repurposed generic drug. And there's another slight twist on that, which is called interventional pharmacoeconomics, which is basically a way of funding clinical trials immediately out of cost savings by doing comparative studies. So, but in essence, it's about using financial innovation to address market failures. And I think blockchain has always been about that, and also ultimately, take out the middleman and help create more efficient ways of transacting with each other with low transaction costs.
Thank you. Thank you. I have several questions, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get to them. So the first one, and this is open to all the panelists to answer if you so choose, but if you could answer in just a couple of sentences, what surprises have you seen as you use blockchain to automate data compliance? For example, have you found new uses of data, or have there been epiphanies about ecosystem dynamics? Like what surprises can you point to in your experience?
So I'll start. What's pleasant surprise for me is when people really fully adopt the technology, and you can embed business logic into the code and the smart contract, you actually kind of reinvent business models and businesses, and you literally can save a ton of money. And that's been a huge pleasant surprise, the benefits you can provide for the enterprise or for the individuals who actually appreciate, and this is probably more the permissionless side, less the enterprise side, the ability to really custody their own digital fingerprint, their own data, and treat it as their own. Right now, we know in the world of, call it, social media, your information from one platform can be easily transferred to another. So on the permissionless side, the users who are in the blockchain ecosystem really appreciate the fact that they really own their information.
That is completely understandable. Anyone else have something to add to what John said? Okay, I'll go to the next one. This next question is specific to AI, which is absolutely my bias. So AI in healthcare requires, of course, a heightened attention to data quality, representativeness, and compliance. Today, though, there's a very small homogeneous group of human beings developing AI. And so the question to you all is, how does blockchain and a platform like yours address both data compliance issues as well as some of the concerns, in particular around data representativeness in AI in healthcare use cases? And do you have a favorite story of an organization that maybe used trusted healthcare data enabled by blockchain to train an AI model?
Yeah, hey, Paige, I'll start there. When we continue to hear in market about the evolution of AI, and it's super impressive through the speed of things getting to market and the overall ability for these AI mechanisms to learn from what's going on. But from a remedy perspective, we're always thinking it always begins with data quality. From a remedy perspective, we make sure that everything is captured in the real world evidence structure that's admissible over to FDA and regulatory agencies. And it's all about that data integrity related to what can be shown and what not can be shown, and then how that information can be absorbed by these AI engines so that they can actually utilize this, so that when you're tracking consents, permissions, compliance, assuring that data quality from that source of origination. And for us, when companies decide to start running on Remedy, we call it that Remedy Genesis moment. That level of trust and efficacy travels throughout that transaction serialization that John was touching on. And it's always important to have that zero knowledge proof backend for that verification for these training mechanisms, so that machine learning can take information that is siloed, but also what is in the common space that's real world evidence, while you're doing that confidential computing and putting those things out in market. So we're excited the capabilities. I think the regulatory guidelines that we have in market today, we stay within those guidelines. It'll continue to evolve. But for our perspective, we'd like to bring that highest level of data quality from point one, and then allow the market to figure out innovative ways to utilize that within the privacy, within the security, within the compliant mechanisms that we have in market. So we see that partnership and continuing to grow as we move forward. So it's exciting for what the market will bring in the future.
Anyone else have something to add?
Well, I think I just want to, in fact, follow up and expand on what Dave said about how you can really use, make innovative use of this secure data and sharing secure data. So we believe that one of the problems we in our industry is pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical manufacturing is distributed, and regulatory agencies might really, inspect when they start their operation, and the companies can show that yes, it is compliant to GMP operations. But what happens afterwards? How do you really regulatory agencies can actually monitor this? And we want to really bring completely a different model for regulatory compliance. We actually want to use blockchain data architecture, and we want to invite regulatory agencies to, in real time, access specific parts of our data which are only focused on operations. They can actually, without any prior appointment, they can actually, in a way, audit us in real time. And if we can do this, in return, we would ask the regulatory agencies to expedite approval of our facility, approval of our products. This will be a completely new model of regulating pharmaceutical manufacturing, not only in Africa, but worldwide.
Could you?
We want to really.
Apologies, there's a little lag. I want to ask, how might this approach effectively directly benefit those historically vulnerable communities who've been continuously underrepresented in patient data?
Yeah, it definitely. Very direct impact will be, this will allow distributed manufacturing to flourish. So if we are able to actually show that this is possible, that you are able to produce medicines and distribute them at the highest quality in Africa, we see a really rapid growth of this industry. For example, Gates is not willing to invest right now in Africa for manufacturing. Instead, they're investing money in China so that medicines can be produced in China and then exported to Africa. If we are able to demonstrate that we can do this in Africa, I can see Gates-like players putting large amount of investment and rapidly grow local capacity, which directly will benefit the population in Africa, which is absolutely needed.
So your point is, through the use of these technologies, we can rapidly iterate on the supply chain in order to be able to directly benefit localized communities. I'm just curious, I want to hone in specifically about patient data.
Right.
So for example, since we have underrepresented groups in patient data, I know that there's been a lot of controversy about synthetically generating patient data for historically underrepresented groups. I'm curious, as you've all been leaders in blockchain, what your thoughts are on this. Like, in which kinds of situations do you feel that it is appropriate and inappropriate to synthetically generate patient data? And what are your thoughts on how is it that by using something like blockchain, we can earn the trust of these historically marginalized communities?
Pedro, let's give a great example. I was walking the streets in Nairobi, and we were learning about what it was like to be in market in these places. And a lesson that Jay and I picked up right away is we were walking by a pharmacy, and they're like, "No, Dave, that's not a real pharmacy. This one over here is," right? So, at that level, at the grassroots where a mother is walking with her children, they know where the counterfeit market exists and the other counterfeit market. So there's an inherent distrust in what that ecosystem truly is. For a remedy perspective, to have the ability to tie the identification of the patient, a non-counterfeit product that can be manufactured in high quality in region, and close that loop to make sure that that patient is achieving wellness. At the very core of when Remedy was formed, Dr. Cross and I were sitting on that couch outside the Medicine for All program at the Gates Foundation, we always said patient first. And that patient first has many flavors, as you're describing. Having the trust that the population is really getting served. Products coming to the market to deliver that wellness are truly there. Their ability to be participatory in what evolution is and research is in our industry to bring those innovative solutions. Some of the orphaned children's disease drugs that Darren's organization is focusing on. Sometimes in certain markets, you just don't see it. Until you walk a mile in someone's shoes, you understand those challenges. So those challenges exist. And we said, oh, is there a technology that can help that challenge? I was in the Gobi Desert and I saw a child looking up as we were working with her parents. And I'm the father of 4. I didn't have to speak Mongolian to know that child was scared. And those are the things that take the technology and what we do as business founders and bring it to the real personable impact that we can bring to market in those places. So, at the highest level for us, we think about that the populations tend to have less trust. It's just fundamental in some of these underserved markets, even in rural South Carolina. I'm also chairman of SC Bio, and we have a large push for rural health programs, even across the Lowcountry here. And to take innovation, to take the understanding, to realize what is truly happening with these populations is key, and the fragmentation has got to be addressed. So we always say there's 3 legs of the stool to wellness. If you don't do them all, the stool falls over. But those lives we impact through technology is the reason that we think that patient data is so crucial to understanding the real problem, the real solution, most importantly, how that solution gets delivered to impact those lives.
I have another example. It's not necessarily healthcare, but it is an example of how financial innovation can affect and help underserved population. So Avalanche, or I should say Ava Labs, using the Avalanche blockchain, is working with Lemonade, the parametric insurance company, actually their charitable arm, to create a solution for subsistence farmers in Africa. So in certain parts of Africa, these subsistence farmers, if they have a disaster and the crop is wiped out, the whole village does not eat. So what we've done is found that if you put certain things on a blockchain, I'll explain shortly, not only will you save enough in the system so that it can make it affordable for these subsistence farmers to receive insurance in case something bad happens, but also it can actually help change human behavior. Like these are subsistence farmers who've never heard of insurance, and the concept of putting money into a pool and benefiting when there is a real unfortunate situation. So putting it on a blockchain, basically what you've done is you've automated oracles for the weather, so you can pull things in. You put the claims and the rules of how money gets distributed into the blockchain itself. Even in the payment mechanisms, all you need is a mobile phone to use a stable coin to pay them when they need it. So suddenly, all of a sudden, you're taking so many, in the supply chain, providing that insurance in a normal structure. There are so many intermediaries, and they take their little vig, which, again, necessary in certain industries. But all of a sudden, you streamline the payment flow, the information flow, and you also get to teach them from a social awareness perspective, this concept of insurance. So that's a perfect example of using financial innovation to address existing challenges of underserved population.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other closing comments? Anything that you would like people to know before we close today?
Well, I'll go if no one else is going to go. First of all, we're super excited to work with Dave and Remedy, especially for the healthcare space. I think it's just big needs there, lots of needs. And not only am I excited for this partnership, but I'm excited that Remedy and Ava Labs will be able to design features, tools on our platform and their platform so that future healthcare innovators can literally almost like Shopify or Wix just pull and grab the necessary services or products they need and allow them to create solutions in a very efficient and cheap manner.
Yeah, I'll go next. And again, thank you so much for your time. I know you're doing amazing things over at IBM. We're always honored that you take some time to spend with us and the other people on the panel. I'm very grateful. And I look around this webcast, I'm always thinking, you can't teach someone passion, and people just bring passion to this. And I've had conversation with everyone, and it's inspiring. Those days when changing the paradigm is hard. It just fundamentally is. It impacts life. You're impacting behavior. You're reestablishing a paradigm by which it's evolutionary and it disrupts things. But that's not always a bad thing, right? It's exciting for all of us. So, the time that everyone shares and talks about what's going on in the markets, the time, Darren and I are in the backcountry in Kenya, and Sava and I are in Barcelona or anywhere in the world. That's the beauty and the applicability of a forum like this, to share our ideas and hopefully spawn somebody else's idea that goes, hey, I need to reach out to Remedy because I've got an idea. I think I'll run on. I can accelerate my product to market because they've done a lot of the heavy lifting. We can accelerate. We don't have to worry about scale. The Avalanche backbone, the subnets can handle the scale. And we've got real world cases. I know Darren would love to have people come down anytime and talk about continuous flow manufacturing. And Sava and I talking about DeSci. It's just, we have conversations and it turns into evening chats that go late into the night, and it's exciting. So again, I hope this panel does nothing more than become infectious for what can happen. Realize people are out there making those changes, and everyone on this panel I know is open to having somebody reach out and say, hey, I've got something too. Please do. We always take time because it takes many people to change the world, and we're part of that. So I'm really honored.
Oh, excellent. Well, this one I thought was a very engaging conversation. I appreciate you all joining today, and I look forward to meeting and continuing the conversation at a later date. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, you guys, thank you so much.